Hello again and welcome to another Warhammer 40k Imperial Guard 8th edition video. Today we will be doing something slightly different. I have been slowly but surely working my way through the unit reviews for 8th edition Imperial Guard, but I'm just going to mix things up so it doesn't get too predictable, too boring, and we're just going to do sort of lessons learned from my first few games of 8th edition, what I've learned as an Imperial Guard commander. So, without further ado, let's jump straight into it. So first thing, I want to preface by saying I have played 5 games of 8th edition now. I have played one against Blood Angels, one against Space Marines, one against Grey Knights and Space Marines, and 2 against Dark Eldar. One Dark Eldar was a shooty list, lots of Ravagers, and one Dark Eldar was a close combat list, lots of beasts, Razor Wings, Chimera, Clawed Fiends, Grotesques. Really, really interesting list, actually. And I've played a variety of points levels. So I've played 1,000 points, 2 1,500, and 2 2,000 point games. And so I played a fairly good variety against a fairly good variety of opponents. Some close combat armies, some shooting armies. Obviously, there's loads out there. I've yet to face off against the Horde army, but this is sort of first impressions, like I said, what I've learned so far. So, I have won all 5 games so far, which is incredible. And this is the next thing I want to say. Guard are back in town, baby. I can say this with confidence now. There have been games where I've played where I've set up and gone, fuck, I am in trouble. And then the first few turns have gone by and I'm like, hang on, this is kind of easy. So guys, I know everyone's still figuring stuff out, and I know that crazy wacky waving inflatable arm tube men combinations are going to come out there. Crazy combinations are going to come out soon. But in these early days of 8th, Imperial Guard are really powerful. I mean, I dare to say it, but Imperial Guard could be overpowered. I mean, really overpowered. It's incredible. And it comes down to like a number of factors. And basically, long story short, guys, we have the ability to lay down so many cheap models. And this translates into so much firepower that, and this must be what it felt like to be a Tau player in, I mean, have I become what I hate so much? This must be what it felt like to be a Tau player in 6th and 7th edition. Like, I'm shooting my opponents to death by like turn 3. And that's crazy. Like, the last game I played, I didn't want to because I wanted it to be a fun game for both me and my opponent. I probably could have shot him, tabled him, or close to like tabled 90% of his force by the end of turn 2. Maybe turn 3. I mean, that's just disgusting. So, what is causing this? What is causing this? Like I said, it's the ability to spam cheap models, but what units have I used so far which have stood out and I've gone, yeah, these are really good. Okay, so number 1, the best unit by far that has performed absolutely fantastically in every single one of my games is Conscripts. All I can say, guys, is you need to all give me a big thank you, because all through 7th edition I was saying, get yourself some Conscripts, guys. Conscripts are really good for 7th edition. Well, holy shit, guys. If you thought Conscripts were good in 7th, they are out of this world in 8th. It's just, they're so cheap. Essentially, Conscripts combined with the order first rank fire, second rank fire, it means we now have a 3-point model putting out 4 shots. And that's just absolutely insane. I've started running squads of 25-man Conscripts. Because the reason I'm doing it is it's really easy, because you just go, it's a 25-man Conscript squad. I'm going to first rank fire, second rank fire you. You're all in rapid fire range. So that's a flat 100 shots. That is 100 shots from a 75-point unit. That is just insane. You're paying less than 1 point per shot. And in theory, every single one of those shots has the capability to do a wound. Now, in reality, that's not going to happen. But if you have a couple of lucky rounds from your conscript squads, you'll just decimate a unit. I mean, in one game I had 100 conscripts. In one game, I did 20 wounds to vehicles with conscripts, wounding on 6s. 20 unsaved wounds. Absolutely insane. So, conscripts are fantastic because they're so cheap, they put out so much firepower, and also because now we can fall back from combat. So, you get an armor save against most things. So what I'm tending to find, I don't want to get too stuck onto one unit. I'm trying to keep this video fairly short. What I found is your opponent will hit your first line of conscripts. They will, with something, they will attack your first line of conscripts. And no longer do you have to sit there and take it on the chin. You now just sort of take 10, maybe 15 casualties from the combat. Battle shock will kill one more because you've got a commissar there. And then you just pull back. And then you're like, well, they're going to get back in the fight, so you're going to take another sort of 20, 30 shots from what's left of that squad. And then I'm also going to shoot you with a squad of conscripts that's behind them and put another 100 shots into you. So you are still going to be taking about 120 shots, which is still going to do a decent amount of damage to you. I mean, it's absolutely nuts. So conscripts are absolutely fantastic. I talked about commissars for like a second there. Second most amazing and important unit that I have noticed is commissars. Now, I haven't used Lord Commissars yet, guys. I've just used the basic commissar, and I have to say I'm getting plenty of mileage out of it. My sort of general tactic is to take a commissar and a company commander and pair them up together and stick them behind a vehicle of some kind. Because both of those combined, if you just give your company commander like a shotgun, a free shotgun, and you give the commissar a bolter, and you sit them behind a vehicle to protect them from snipers, and then you just conga line, because I talked about conga lines in 7th edition, guys. Well, guess what? Once again, my tactics have carried on over. Conga line back as many squads as you can to your little commissars and your company commanders, and you'll fight, and then they don't run away because commissars stop battle shock. End discussion. You're basically paying 30 points. How I look at it is, if you have one commissar for every 2 squads, you're paying 15 points per squad to make them immune to battle shock. That's incredible. And again, it's kind of like with company commanders, they're 30 points. You're paying 15 points because they've got 2 orders, so that's 2 squads again. 15 points per squad to give them 4 shots rapid fire. I mean, that's, wow. That's really good. So I just can't praise that enough. It's absolutely just fantastic. Company commanders are really good. It's a bit of a shame, but I've kind of not really found any reason for taking platoon commanders, because a platoon commander is 2 orders for 40 points. If you take two platoon commanders, it's 2 orders for 40 points. Company commanders 30 points and you get 2 orders. So you save those 10 points. Now, I can see platoon commanders being useful in a battalion, because you'll probably be taking up most of your HQ slots with like PASC and tank commanders, whereas you'll be using your elite slots for junior commanders. But all I can say is, in a brigade detachment, you can easily fit in 2 to 3 company commanders and still have 2 to 3 tank commanders. So easy peasy. Moving on, Lehman Russ command PASC #1 and Lehman Russ command tanks. When I first used these, because they beat my expectations so much, I thought they were amazing. Now that the euphoria has worn off a little bit, I can give them maybe a little bit more balanced assessment of tank commanders and PASC. PASC is amazing, and I have no criticisms of him. He is well worth every point. I think every single list, Imperial Guard list, should have PASC in it. That's not even an exaggeration. He is that good. And he is, relatively speaking, with a full loadout, cheaper than he was in in 7th edition, so you're not really paying any more. You're actually paying less points for him. Like a Punisher Pask is only 225 points now instead of 250. So Pask is amazing. Tank Commanders are also pretty good, and I do still like them, but the problem I found with Leman Russ Tank Commanders is they're really, really expensive. You know, you're paying for a classic Leman Russ loadout, battle cannon, las cannon, 2 heavy bolters, in a Tank Commander. You're paying 225 points, and for the very, very same price, you could buy like 2 Hellhounds or 2 Basilisks, or, you know, roughly, you know, it's crazy. So Tank Commanders are really good, but they are very expensive. But what you're paying for is that ability to take a punch to the face. That's what your Tank Commanders are good for. So yeah, not much more to say. I've already done a video recently on tanks, so go and look at that if you're not sure what I'm talking about. What else have I used? Hellhounds are amazing. Hellhounds are absolutely fantastic. You might need to use a strategic reroll here and there to make sure that Inferno Cannon's getting the most shots, but they are amazing. I like to run my Hellhounds. A pair of Hellhounds seem to work well in pairs, like a little hunting pack, 2 to 3 Hellhounds. I find 1 tends to get stuck on its own, but 2 still get paired up. So it's up to you. But a pair of Hellhounds is a really, really solid investment. The fact that your bloody Inferno Cannon is strength 6 and the fact it does 2 damage has saved my ass on a number of occasions. And it's a good speed, and it's one of the only ways of getting around your shitty ballistic skill, and it's still relatively cheap. Now there has been talk of making like fireball tanks, like putting 3 heavy flamers on a Leman Russ. My only criticism of that is you make the Leman Russ even more expensive, and you're gonna have to get close with it, and you're paying all these points for a fireball Leman Russ. I'm trying to think how many points it would cost. It's like, let's say you don't go for a Tank Commander. Let's say you go, the fireball Leman Russ seems to be like 3 heavy flamers and a Punisher, and that gets around your shitty ballistic skill. It's all strength 5 shots. So I think it's like 132 points for a basic Leman Russ, 20 points for the fireball, for the Punisher cannon, plus like 51 points. So it's like 202 points roughly. It's about 200 points. Now again, for the same, and you get, you know, for the same price, you get 4 Hellhounds, which are faster, do more damage, have got more wounds, have only slightly less, only 1 toughness less, only 1 wound less. I mean, anyway. But I haven't used Fireball Leman Russes. I'm just saying they don't seem as good as everyone's making out to be, but I can say categorically that Hellhounds are worth it. Next thing I've tried out is infantry squads. Now, I like, my favourite combination, and what I found to be the most effective combination of special weapons that gives you the most bang for your buck for infantry squads is a heavy infantry squad with heavy bolter, plasma gun and plasma pistol, which comes to a flat 60 points. When you've seen my first battle report, when I used these for the first 3 games, then I swapped out to and just took more conscripts. I just replaced infantry squads with conscripts. I can't say I've noticed a difference, honestly. Infantry squads are good, and they can take good firepower, but I'm tending to find that there are better platforms for your big guns, and I'm tending to find you don't need infantry squads. That's not to say they're bad. No, they're really, really good. But are they better than conscripts? I mean, what I found is since I switched over to like pure conscript infantry, what I found is I have two proper ranks of conscripts, like 75 strung out across the front, 75 behind, sort of thing. Then my big stuff behind that. And what I found is, I found it more useful to have that extra line of cannon fodder than I have found it to have a few extra plasma shots here and there. I don't know how I'm gonna. Plasma is so good in this edition that I feel kind of weird not taking any. But I've not taken any plasma for 2 games now and haven't noticed a difference. Weirdly, I haven't noticed a difference. Anyway, time will tell. Harker and Yarrick are both good. They're both good. They both give you rerolls to 1. Yarrick is more expensive, but Yarrick can be essentially used as Harker and a Commissar and a company commander in like sort of one go, because of that ability to reroll 1s is kind of like having orders, and the summary execution is kind of like, you know, keeps everyone around. Trying to think what else I've used. I think the last thing I've used, last 2 units, right? Basilisks and Rough Riders. Now I've only used these in 1 game each, so I'm still debating on how to use these. But Basilisks, I found 108 points of cheap goodness. The reason why I like the Basilisks is because, and the reason why I feel like they're pretty powerful, and they're very consistent. They're very, very consistent. What I was finding with my Basilisks, because you roll 2d6 and you pick the highest for your number of shots, I was consistently getting 4 or 5 shots. And this consistently translated into 2 to 3 hits. And this consistently translated into 2 wounds. Which I tended to, because of the AP -2, my opponent was occasionally stop 1. And this consistently worked out to me basically doing 2 to 3 wounds every turn with the Basilisk. And I tended to find taking 2 of them meant that I was reliably able to do, if you include the heavy bolters they come with, reliably able to do about 6 wounds with the Basilisk as a pair each turn. And I found that to be quite effective. I found that they were very good at just sort of smashing vehicles, because there's no vehicle out there, unlike the battle cannon, there's no vehicle out there which it wounds on 4s. It wounds everything on 3s currently. I mean, Imperial Knights, all that kind of stuff wounds on 3s. So I found the Basilisk to be very cost effective. It wasn't like, oh my god, this thing is brutal and overpowered, but it was just very consistent and very predictable. And I would go, right, I'm going to fire this Basilisk and probably this Basilisk at this target, and I need to do this amount of damage. And I would consistently get that amount of damage. So I would say the biggest factor that makes the Basilisk a very, very, very good unit is its predictability. You know that when you shoot that Basilisk at a target, you're probably going to do 2 or 3 wounds. So, and that's that level of sort of assuredness. I don't know what you'd call it, but that level of knowledge, knowing that's what each unit can do, is really good. The Basilisk is really good at that. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is Rough Riders. Now, Rough Riders perform a really, really key duty. They are basically a tax unit. If you want to take a brigade, you've got to take 3 heavy support. And if you're playing at 1500 points or below, you're going to want to take the cheapest options. Now, currently, that is either Rough Riders or Scout Sentinels or Armoured Sentinels. Now, let me tell you that Sentinels are not worth it. Unless you really, really want to squeeze every single point, and you need to save 15 points by taking 3 Sentinels and 3 squads of Rough Riders, then take the Sentinels. If you need to, go for it. However, the Armour Sentinel is okay, but it suffers all the problems of the regular Sentinel, which is it just doesn't do any damage. I mean, you're looking at sort of classic loadout, Sentinel sort of autocannon or Sentinel multi-laser. Classic loadout, you do like 1 wound. If I work math hammers right, it's like 1 unsaved wound every other turn. So if you have a 6-turn game, you do 3 unsaved wounds. That's not really worth it. And that's against like Space Marines, you know, not really worth it. Rough Riders are really, really good because 1, they are a cheap tax unit. 2, they have got much better. Much better. 2 wounds a pop. Lances plus chainswords plus horses means a decent number of attacks on the charge. And I used them in my game I had last night with Dark Elder. I killed 2 Beastmasters, a Clawed Fiend, and a squad of Scourges. That's easily enough to make their points back. Easily. Because they're fast and they move and they're just good. They're a fantastic points investment. I wouldn't necessarily take them bigger than 5-man squads, but I'd definitely take them as 5-man squads. Definitely. Cheap tax units. Also, the fact that they have outflank means that they're a really good way of securing line breaker if you need it. Really good way. Now, the final thing I want to say about Rough Riders is I use Bretonnian Knights for mine. Now, this isn't modelling for advantage because, quite frankly, I'm using Games Workshop approved models and they don't make Rough Riders anymore. So, these are the closest things that I can get. They block line of sight. 50 points blocks line of sight. Now, that's so amazingly useful because that means, because I've been using Lehman Russes to block line of sight to my characters. And that's been like literally 50% of the reason I've been taking a Lehman Russ. Well, now I can do it for a quarter of the price with a squad of Rough Riders, and I still have 10 wounds. It's not actually bad at all. Rough Riders are really, really decent, really good. So that's an assessment of the units that I have used so far. So just to go through it, conscripts are amazing. Pask is amazing. Hellhounds are great, and commissars are amazing. I mean, all I want to sort of summarise is so far I have used a decent mix of units from the Guard Codex. I mean, I've used Basilisks for fuck's sake. I've never used them in 7. I used Rough Riders. I've never ever used Rough Riders before. You know, I'm taking the classic Lemus loadout, and every single game I'm playing, it's like, this is just good. It's just, there's no really, really, really weak options in the Guard Codex anymore, and like my opponents are getting frustrated. They're like, you know, my opponents are getting frustrated playing Guard because they're like, they can't think of a way to beat them without list tailoring. Take all comers, it's really hard. Anyway, guys, really, so that's just my thoughts on 8th edition so far. My experience, Guard are looking really, really powerful. It's really important. I want to know how you guys are sort of finding 8th edition so far. What sort of weaknesses, limitations of the Guard have you come across? Have I just been lucky and I've beaten all my opponents? Maybe Guard are actually really weak. But all I can say is I'm finding them powerful, and I really want to know what you guys, the community at large, is how you're finding Guard to play as. Powerful or weak? Please let me know. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.